So, like I said, my mom's Filipino, my dad is Puerto Rican, and like they're not together anymore. But even like sometimes he'll make like weird ass comments to me, and like at one point like they were together, and then he had a girlfriend that was white, she was Italian. He would say weird shit to her all the time. Not weird, but like he would make like just comments, and she would probably make like little weird ass microaggressions too, and like they have kids together, and I'm like, y'all are weird, like this is sus. Not rocking with it.
Which is the African American culture campus. I grew up from an all-white town, so having that experience really shaped me and made me more open-minded to that. Also, my girlfriend currently is Bengali, so clearly that is very different than my culture, and she's much different than I am, and she experiences much more than I am, so I have to learn a lot to be in that, part of that relationship, also my job. That has changed a lot, but also, like, I think the problem with part of this is that, like, fetishization still exists. So there is people who fetishize mixed kids, and then when they're like, always, I've seen tons of comments about the mixed kid, and the kid comes out, not white enough as mixed, and then they get, crap for that. The kid is not treated as nice as it would be if they came out like Drake's kids, for example. Like, I feel like when that popped off, it's because these kids look white. That's what it was, I think. And I feel like there's a lot of fetishization and stereotypes about certain people, particularly like, example, like the interracial couple with Asian women or black men. Like, there's a lot of these really negative stereotypes about these people and objectification. They're not people to them. Yeah, you're having these experiences with them, but they're not as people, but as objects. And that kind of like doesn't take away. And I think that like even within mixed people, there's like still like society creates a hierarchy where certain mixes are considered better in society than others. And I think that's like still harmful. And
on the same page with you is like understanding is like a big part of like combating racist attitudes. I feel like
a lot of racism comes from lack of exposure to other races. And it's been shown before that a lot of people who, like 90% of people who are, racist or you use microaggressions and things like that are usually people with lack of exposure. They're usually people that kind of like fence it and would never consider themselves racist or like, say anything outwardly negative about a race, but they contribute to things like microaggressions because they don't have that kind of exposure to other racial groups. So once you kind of start putting them together, I feel like obviously it won't solve all issues, but I feel like that's a big foot forward. Yeah.
I did not say I was white at all. I definitely went into better colleges than people I knew who were Asian or white. So I mean, that is a benefit. One of the few times there is a benefit to being Hispanic in this country. Yeah, and then for applying for jobs, I currently see that like when I did apply with Hispanic now, I got less interviews than I did when I switched it to white. Which I started doing that afterwards. I started out like, oh, I don't want to go somewhere racist. They don't hire me. They don't want me. And then I'm hearing so many rejections. I'm like, I need a job. I really need that job. Let's see if this works. And it started to work, which is really sad.
And, like, it was the last day for like, because I guess it was February, so they're like, oh, Black History Month, like, that's nice. I'm not black, but they were like, any people of color, you can submit your poems for free. Because there was a fee. I was like, well, yeah. And like, obviously. So I guess like things like that. But obviously, like a lot of the time, like there's not really a benefit to being like not a white person.
I'm Asian too, but for the most part, I usually say Caucasian because I'm like, that would be too unfair. Like, they think that they're like getting a diversity hire or whatever. Like, they're not.
Yeah, unless you're drunk.
Unless I'm drunk.
I feel like that's like such
like sounds that are associated with like Hispanic cultures or with Black cultures, where it's like for Spanish cultures, usually like the sombrero theme or whatever it's called. And that's just, I find that interesting because that's like amplifies. That's not the question that was asked. I definitely have hidden parts of my identity before just because I feel like it's easier if I'm in a group of like mainly Black people, like it's easier to not speak on my Latino side and try to like associate with them. Or if I'm in a group of Latinos, it's easier for me to associate with them by not saying I'm Black. And I think it's also important that me personally, like choosing the whiter traits from either side when I'm in a white space. So it's like choosing the English-speaking Black person over like the non-English-speaking Latino person, at least within myself, is something else that I used to do often. I feel like now I don't hide it, but I definitely see why people would hide either side of their identity, especially if they're mixed with something that would make them passing.
So I'm Indian. And growing up, I wasn't really like, that in tune with either of my backgrounds, but I feel like it's easier to be Italian American than it is Indian in this country. Like my Italian American side is like in baseball, So So growing up, like I saw a lot of the negative stereotypes attributed to Indian people. Like, you know, we're dirty, we eat with our hands, we smell, we're stupid, you know, like things like that. So it's kind of hard to hide the fact that I'm Indian or like brown for that matter. But I grew up being kind of like ashamed of those things. So I never really associate with those things. And I would always be embarrassed about it. And it took me a long time to kind of unlearn that. Because I was kind of conditioned by, like, you know, movies and TV shows. Like I remember growing up watching the show Jessie. And you guys remember Robbie, you know, very thick accent, had a Komodo dragon, like, come on. You know?
It's more that, like, not that I, like, hide it, but I just don't say. I was in the room, and it was like, well, it's better for me not to say anything, because it's better off. Or just saying, if we're with Spanish people, just saying I'm Puerto Rican is better than saying that I'm mixed. Or, you know, for more white people, especially when, like, they hear something racist, instead of, like, ooh, maybe not say it, saying I'm Puerto Rican is the answer here. Because it's just better to get through the situation better than just sitting there being like, yeah, I don't have awkward conversations, get comfortable about it. Like, so something's better not to say anything. Not like I'm hiding it, but like I'm not being active about it, which is probably not good enough itself either.
I might have hid like a part of my identity was like, I don't know, being Jewish is like, sometimes I feel like I need to not be so outspoken about that at times, because there's a lot of bigoted people who don't love Jewish people very much. So I mean, that's like probably the side of me that like at times I'm pretty cautious about, but for the most part I'm not so cautious about that, and I'm pretty proud of both of my backgrounds. So that's why I don't really feel like I need to hide anything for the most part.
Same thing. I don't have like a super coherent answer, and I feel like I've agreed with what everybody has said so far. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this kind of question. I think just specifically for your own self-identity, I think once you start getting into the habit of like, this is what I'm passing as, you kind of lose a part of yourself and your identity a little bit. I'm just talking strictly from a personal perspective. Like, when I just go, both sides of my family are very, very different, and it gets exhausting having to kind of switch, having to code switch back and forth. You know, passing doesn't always necessarily help your situation. Like, the original college that I went to was like 95% white, and I feel like I'm very white passing at times because my skin is lighter, and you know,
But you get like Italian a lot, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, like when I tell people I'm Italian, they usually are like, "Oh yeah," like I could see that. So like I come off as very white passing. However, when I'm in an environment like I was my freshman year, it didn't matter. So that being in that situation and having it not matter really kind of like eroded me a little bit, which is why I ended up transferring. And I think it's just more important to be more true to who you are rather than, you know, leaning into what you're passing as. I mean, that's just for my own opinion. I know that was a long answer.
No, that's fine.
That's why I'm like,
Your answer.
That's
because I was,
fine.
like, all over the place. But most of what you said I agree with, and like whatever you guys said, so I guess I should be over there. I feel like that was pretty outlining.
You can always switch if you want.
Yeah, imagine me there.
Okay. We want to stay here physically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had interpreted like importance like for your identity and like, you know, the way you look. Like, I mean, as someone who's like white passing like me, like nobody would really know what my mix was unless I told them. Like for me, it's like the importance of race is like how I was raised, and like my like the culture that I experienced growing up is like an important part of my identity. But like thinking about it in like a real world way, like I have so much privilege, and like that is more important than like in like a like the effects of like being mixed. Like I do not need to like worry about most of the things that like other mixed people have to worry about.
Good answer.
Spanish enough. When I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak Spanish enough. I'm not there. But anyone else, on this side, they strongly agree. Like they're like, oh, that's exotic. That's an interesting combo. That's interesting. Well, other people are like, oh, you're not Hispanic. You're just third generation. You're not, you know, you're in the corner. Like, just like strongly disagree.